Hello and welcome to the Serving Love podcast. Today we have special guest Adam Lamb on. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, Meredith.
Hi. Adam is a men's sex coach in New York City. He hosts naked events, teaches BDSM, and writes about the intersection of modern love and ancient wisdom. Ooh, I love that. Modern love and ancient wisdom. That's so good.
Mm.
Can't wait to dive into that. So Adam and I met, gosh, how many years ago now? Maybe 5 or 6 years, I think.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, we met at a nudist community where we both went in the summer in New Jersey. And Adam was running, it was just naked at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were putting on different events in the city and outside of the city, getting people to be comfortable being naked in community. It was awesome.
Thank you.
But, aside from that, I don't feel like I know you that well on a personal level. We've like weaved in and out of community together, been at different workshops and seen each other along the way. But I felt the call to reach out to you. I don't even know why. I just listen. Like when somebody pops into my mind, I just listen and I reach out. And so I'm just so curious to see where we go today. So thank you for saying yes to the unknown because serving love is totally unscripted. We don't know where it's going to go.
I say hell yes to the unknown.
Yeah, I tell my guests I love it to be imperfect. I love it when people are just so human. We mess our words up or we say something we think is stupid. Like I invite all of it. Just like the imperfection of being human. So, love that you were a yes. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So tell me, I'm so curious, and I read that modern love and ancient wisdom. I'm feeling so uh like my interest is so piqued by ancient wisdom these days. I'm feeling that wave in the collective conscious right now. So what does that mean to you? Modern love and ancient wisdom.
Yeah, well, let's start with modern love. And when I say that, I don't mean modern in the sense of like modern, postmodern, pre-modern, like how anthropologists use it. I just mean today.
Yeah.
So, um, just whatever's going on today in this world of dating apps and this big revolution around gender and speech and love, that also is changing. What we When I was a kid, it was controversial for gay couples to be together, or rather for gay couples to want to be married, and now that's fairly mainstream.
Mhm.
And what our definitions of love are have been and will continue to change over time.
Mhm.
But for the moment, the things that I'm seeing that define modern love are things like polyamory, are things like the choice to not have children or the choice to not get married. Um, I know dear friends that are platonic and asexual that experience love and share that, or who will get married, for papers, and that's another form of love. Loving someone so much you want them to be in the country with you, and you may not have sex with
Mm.
them, you may not have a romantic relationship with them.
Yeah.
So there's a Cambrian explosion thanks to progressive liberalism, which is broadly something that I'm supportive of. And yet there's a lot of, like any revolution, there's overreach and there's some
Mhm.
negative externalities. And
Yeah.
it's that point at which at least for me, I've found a lot of grounding in personally my study of yoga, but frankly, I think any system that's been around for more than 500 years is going to have a lot of value.
Mm. Mhm. And why do you believe that? I want people to know why that is so important.
Right. Yeah. Well, Ken Wilber said something that I find interesting, which is that like any any system that, by virtue of the fact that it exists, means that there's some kernel of value there,
Mm-hmm.
and the that it has worked for some people at some time. So for me as a principle, I don't disregard any system of personal development or social development. I will have judgments about any system. I have my own biases. I tend to lean secular personally. I tend to avoid sort of magical thinking. And yet
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot. I hired an astrologer for a year. I saw
Mm.
her, nearly every other week, and I got a lot out of that. Um, so the why, my answer to that question, just to take astrology for as an example, the generally the older the system, the more comprehensive it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
So things like human design, and I think I've heard something about like gene keys, like these, they're super relatively modern systems that are maybe comprehensive, but they're not time tested.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, they're drawing off of much older systems, like Vedic astrology, just to use that example. If one were to, even just playfully, even just as an experiment, even if you don't really believe it, just just follow your Vedic astrological chart for a year and just see what happens. Use it. What I have personally found, which is having done that and believing none of it on a rational level, but allowing myself the playful, the mystical part of me to pretend to believe. What I've
Mm-hmm.
found is that this very ancient system, like many other ancient systems, is so comprehensive. It touches to me, every area
Mm-hmm.
of the human experience. So what I've noticed is it eliminated a lot of blind spots where some aspect of my being or my interactions with others, I was ignoring for whatever reason. And it just put my attention on it, even just lightly.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the horoscope, we've got different flavors of being in each one of those. And as we move through the year, we can look at those and see how do those show up in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. So what I'm hearing is because I heard you say I tend to stray or not like magical thinking is not something you subscribe to so much. But as you allowed yourself to explore Vedic astrology, you saw its depth. You saw that there was actually a lot of practicality to it. Like it wasn't just some big magical mystical pie in the sky.
Yeah, that even if you don't believe something in a rational
Yes.
sense, it can still be useful.
Yes.
There's a
Mhm.
term for this. It's called a metaphorical truth. One
Mhm.
example being if you believe porcupines can shoot their spines, which they can't, but if you believe that, you're much less likely to fuck with porcupines. You're much less likely to get near one and have a bunch of spines in you.
Mhm.
So it's metaphorically true in the sense that you end up being better off for believing it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Cool. And so I'm curious, like this modern love and ancient wisdom, how do you apply this to the work that you do with men?
Yeah, great question. Uh, so with men, the thing that there's a couple modern uh, traps, I'll say, and one is this idea of of our politics entering the bedroom. And
Mm.
I'm saying this as a person who, frankly, I believe a lot. I resonate with a lot of what feminism says and has to offer. When I read that, I'm like, yeah, in theory, this is really, really, good. And
Mhm.
I diverge with feminism on certain points, such as like porn and BDSM, depending on which feminist you're talking to. Um, but there's one area in which I feel like feminism has absolutely no place, which is the bedroom.
Yes.
And as men, we're not given that critical piece of information.
Uh-huh.
So that would be the, but the consent and the recognizing that, some, I don't know the exact statistics, some horribly high number of women are sexually abused,
Yes.
and not to mention just the kind of creepy, constant creep from maybe
Mhm.
they're like 6, 7 years old and they're getting checked out, at the line at the Walmart.
Mhm.
And this is just an experience of women that, thanks to feminism, we as men are now like aware of, right? All the
Mhm.
work of feminism has brought our attention to that.
Mhm.
Um, and there has, having myself not been given that critical piece of information, I I moved to New York when I was 23. I didn't really have much of a sex education, but I knew one thing, which is like you ask for consent, and just try not to be creepy.
Mhm.
Um, which basically, I mean, I'm personally lucky. Like I moved to New York because I got a modeling career. I got a modeling contract, and so I got a lot of basically free, um, let's just say, like, sex I didn't really have to work for. Like I put my professional modeling pictures on Tinder, and like girls would want to fuck me,
Uh-huh.
which is like
Yeah.
awesome.
Mhm.
And I learned that even being good looking, like, and knowing the consent, and having this general idea that I shouldn't creep women out, I actually ended up turning a lot of them off by not knowing how to be aggressive with them, not how knowing
Mhm.
how to be assertive, not like, they may fuck me once, but like they'd move on. Like I had a what now I think some men are I don't know if this maybe I haven't read or listened to any Jordan Peterson, but I've heard this phrase like boy psychology. I think that
Mm.
was kind of a thing that I was afflicted with, where
Mhm.
I just hadn't grown up. So I was happy
Mhm.
to share, a sexual experience from these women, but ultimately what I was doing is asking their permission, which, as our, um, I think you've worked with Om Rupani a lot. Like
Mhm.
this
Yes.
this energy of treating a woman like your mother is like the opposite thing of
Surest way to
yeah,
have no polarity.
dries them up. And that's what I would do, because I mean, you ask, that's the framework with which I knew how to ask for permission, was
Right.
with women, was like motherly figures. You ask your mom,
Mhm.
can I, please stay out late? And I had that energy in my sexual interactions, which
Mhm.
would just turn women off. And here's the kicker, is a lot of them wouldn't even know why.
Mhm.
Like they would appreciate that I was asking for permission if I could hold their hand, then asking their permission if I could grab a boob, then asking for permission, if I could take off their pants, and asking,
The whole way through.
oh
Yeah.
my God, right? Whereas
Way to
if
kill
I,
the moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that, to have some compassion for myself, like
Yes.
what I was really trying to do is make them feel safe.
Mhm.
But the thing that I'm realizing now is that safety is a much more nuanced thing,
Yes.
where I don't know if have you seen the movie Young Promising Woman?
No.
Oh God, it's incredible. So basically, this woman, she gets um, into the habit of going to bars and pretending to be just blasted drunk, and she'll allow guys to pick her up, and she's like falling over, just can't
Mm.
even make sentences, but she'll allow guys to pick her up, and then when she goes home with them, at some point in the middle of them basically raping her, she'll be like, "So, what are you doing, Jimmy?" And like snap back into her fully sober state. It's a brilliant movie. I highly recommend it. I think everybody should watch it. Um, because the thing that it points out, and the thing that I felt in myself, is that all of that reassurance,
Mhm.
that like I'm a good guy, I'm a nice guy, I'm doing the right thing. Here, look at all this consent, consent, consent. Shove it down your fucking throat. Here's more consent.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like ultimately, all what that was doing was hiding the
Mhm.
monster in me that just wanted to fuck this bitch,
Yeah.
right? And somewhere deep down, women know that.
Uh-huh.
So the nuanced aspect of safety is where if I show them that monster and I show them that I have it under control, I
Yeah.
get the turn on and I ultimately create more safety because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, there's the monster. It's there. And he's got it on a thick chain and he knows how to use it. That's going to create the ultimate safety, the ultimate turn on.
Mhm.
And I can
We
now
love
do
a
that.
skilled beast.
Yeah, awesome. So, and now I can communicate that whole thing with one hand on a woman's like trapezoid or neck,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
back of the neck. Just it's such a delicate thing that can be held in like in containment, in one's gaze, in a single touch that shows like, oh yeah, I know it, you know it, we're here, and that's all that needs to be said.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that. I love it. And I'm just like feeling it in my body. And I want to express to the men listening, like what that does to a woman is like, I could feel my whole body soften. I feel my pussy open. I feel my nipples start to get hard. Like it is so like, it is the best thing when a man can can have that beast and make you feel safe without even saying a word. It's like there's nothing better. And I want to speak to that having compassion. Like I feel like we really needed feminism, like that angry feminism. Like there's like this pendulum swing that happens. Like we go so far to one extreme, the voice gets heard. It makes sense that men would feel scared to express this beast that's monster inside of them. Like a lot, like so many men don't want to be the bad guy, and I love that. Like that heart is so gorgeous. We want to keep that heart. But then it's like bringing that back to where it's like, okay, we can have the heart and we can have the sex online. So thank you for this work. It's so needed in this world.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious, like, can you speak to the aspect of BDSM? Because I really see it as a tool to use to get there. So I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think BDSM is the most underrated therapeutic tool, full
Mhm.
stop.
Mhm.
I love to believe that in 10, 20, 30 years, BDSM will be just a fully, uh, I have complications with around things like licensing and all that, stuff, but just
Mhm.
a legitimate practice. I know
Mhm.
our mutual friend Kay has studied BDSM at the New School. There's
Mhm.
some increasingly some studies around, at the very least, things like bondage and
Mhm.
pain to impact two aspects of BDSM
Mhm.
that are in a clinical setting easy to measure,
Mhm.
but just the role play, um, the containment and the polarity are not as easy to measure, but no less important.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I see it as so useful for people who are wanting to tiptoe into this world, speaking about how men can express their heart and their beast, to have that container set to explore inside of where there's agreed upon rules per se before you go into that, so everybody already knows what's available inside of that container. And there's so much to learn about dynamics that could be so helpful, right? In creating the polarity that so many people are wanting.
Yeah. I'm a big
Hmm.
fan of learning by doing.
Hmm.
And luckily in New York, there's a lot of opportunity to go to BDSM educational spaces.
Hmm.
So these are spaces where anybody can show up. And as long as you have a basic ability to communicate with others, and you may be like, for me as a man, I may show up to this space and just like want to fuck the shit out of, all the women and just like have like all the horniest, most disgusting thoughts in my mind. But as long as I'm able to just keep a thin veil over that enough to do the practice and actually learn a thing or two, and I'm saying
Hmm.
this from experience because that's exactly what happened to me. Um,
Hmm.
Over time, I could through osmosis just really gently learn these lessons from these experiences, such as just having patience, such as learning how to have a conversation and negotiation right before a
Hmm.
scene. And to any man that's listening to this, and frankly, women too, anybody that's listening to this who thinks that they may be curious about BDSM, look for an event. Go on FetLife, go on Facebook, just talk to people. I think there's places to find, especially rope workshops,
Hmm.
uh, where you can get into a space where there's no expectation that you're going to take your underwear off. Uh, you have a central focus, which is you're learning a thing, and the partner is secondary to learning that thing, and
Hmm.
that's a wonderful place to begin. And then eventually you for as a man, you ingratiate yourself into the community, you build a rapport,
Hmm.
and you build friendships. And then at some point you invite a woman to come over and, play with ropes at your house.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's not a trajectory we learn in sex ed. That's not a trajectory
Mm-mm.
our dads taught us, right? But that's a trajectory that I'm saying is accessible to any man that lives within a couple hours of a major city.
Hmm.
And I mean any man.
Yes, all kinds show up. I know this as well. I went to so many events in New York City when I was getting into the world of BDSM, and I particularly found a home with Omru Pani because that flavor speaks to me most. I love the combination of Tantra meets BDSM, but there's every flavor under the sun. I've tried it all. I'm curious, how did you get into this world? Like, what was the path for you? Uh what was the pain point that or the inspiration? Not everything comes from pain, but how old were you? Where did you start? How, like, what was the why?
Yeah. So when I was 23, I got this modeling contract. I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I had been to like one sex party. Actually, at Ron Jeremy had opened a sex club in Portland
Oh,
called
okay.
Club Cesso. It was like this 5-story building in
Oh
downtown
my
Portland. It was crazy. And my girlfriend and I went. She and I were polyamorous. It was my first poly relationship, which I started. I was maybe 21 when we got together, and so we went. We had a good time. It was more like voyeur exhibitionist type of deal. Um, but I was still like, I remember having this judgment about BDSM as like, oh, that's something that couples do when they're bored of each other, and it's like a sign of their failure almost.
God.
They resort to BDSM when their sex gets boring.
Hmm.
Whereas I was like, but me, I love sex. Meanwhile, I didn't really have any understanding of my partner's pleasure. I would just bang away until I come and be like, how is that for you, babe? And
And what would she say? I'm curious.
uh, no, no constructive criticism. Let's put it that way.
Uh-huh.
And,
And do
and
you feel like she wasn't speaking her truth, or
it's hard to say. So since I've been really sexually active since I was a little kid, like I was 12 years old, I was like looking up like how to lick pussy on the internet.
at 12?
Yeah, for sure. And so I've always had like a natural curiosity about women's pleasure and
Hmm.
wanting to get them off. I've like been, sticking things in my ass since I was a child and just like wanting to just learn. I was just learning about everything about sex. So
Hmm.
I think that gave me a lot of natural sort of
Mm.
skills, maybe.
Prowess. Yeah.
Yeah. but nowhere near the level of sensitivity to the woman's system. Like I didn't have,
Mhm.
I basically just thought of them as like me, like they're feeling more or less what I'm feeling.
Mhm.
So like things like stroking, like orgasmic meditation was so far out of my field,
Uh-huh.
which yeah. So this judgment about BDSM started to crack when I moved to New York. I was super lonely. I was basically just this like fuck boy that was like doing modeling gigs and doing cater waiter things, and then fucking girls on Tinder was my hobby. And this one girl, I go on a date with her, and the first thing out of her mouth was like, "I'm 17," and I was like, and she's like, "But I'm turning 18 in 2 weeks, and I'm not gonna fuck you at least until then." And I'm like, okay, this feels weird, but let's keep going, I guess. And so we went on this walk. She she had been studying rope since the time she was like 16. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and she was going to Rutgers the next year, and she was already like involved in their BDSM club, just super early to all of this.
New York
And
City kids.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And she was just so cool. And we got along really well. We did not have sex. And then she invited me to her birthday party, which was held in this
You're 18.
warehouse. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's like a
And
wet dream. You're like
all right. But here's the kicker. Like, yeah, you would think now he gets to fuck the 18-year-old. No, did not happen. Um, uh, but what did happen was no less, actually, probably far more impactful to than that, which was she, being a rope top, tied me up. It was my first time being tied at her birthday party, which was held in this warehouse in New Jersey. And so she ties me up, beats me up, and I love it. I just fell in love.
uh-huh.
I was so perplexed because here I was thinking that, okay, yeah, sure, let the little girl do what she wants, and then I get to fuck her. And whereas
She
like
owned you.
she made me a sissy bitch, and did it in the most loving way.
Wow.
And and I had the aftercare and then everything, and I was so complete after
Uh-huh.
that experience. I
Uh-huh.
like the thought of entering her or doing anything else. It was her birthday party was held within this like big BDSM party that happened every month at the time, and we both just kind of like went our separate ways and continued on throughout the party. But I felt this sense of completeness. She had
Mhm.
created this arc that, to me, the only thing I could relate to that was like sex and having an orgasm, but there was no
Mm.
sex or ejaculatory orgasm. It was baffling to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then another Tinder date, really like around, I don't know, it was before or after, around the same time, she was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fuck you." And so we go to her house, and we're sitting on her bed, and she's like, "So, what are you into?" Which is right now a conversation I would be like, "Yeah, awesome, let's talk about it." But at the time, I was like, uh, I don't know, can we just like feel it out? And she's like, "Nope, we're gonna talk about it." I was so confronted by this idea of like talking about what I wanted,
Mhm.
because like most of what I wanted, or most of what I did, was just like a normal porny arc of like, all right, you suck my dick, and then I'll like maybe go down on you for a little bit, and then I'll fuck you until I come,
Mhm.
right, in various positions, and if you're lucky, you can get an orgasm in there. Um, and her just like interrupting that whole thing was so confronting to me, first off. But I had the feeling she was used to this because she like coached me through this conversation of like, so are you into that? You want me to stick things in your ass? Do you want me to bite you until you bleed? Do you want me to you know and she did have a lot of experience in the BDSM scene, and that really woke me up. I was like, whoa, this is this is really powerful. So between those two experiences, I started to look for more BDSM oriented like partners. I
Mhm.
got invited to different events, like a lot of rope stuff, and I only last year found Om and the working. I was very much used to like working through a medium when in my
Mhm.
study of BDSM. Like I wanted rope. I want to have a thing that I'm like doing. And the thing that I
Yes.
appreciate about his work is it's very philosophical, and B, like very energetic.
Mhm.
So he through that workshop I last saw you at taught me that this process really starts with the gaze, with this notion of containment. And anyone who doesn't know who I'm talking about, go just look up Om Rupani,
Mhm.
Rupani, and the learning that containment is really an energetic thing. And he talks about these different kingdoms. You get your speech, you get your presence, you get your you know everything on lock, and that's how you learn how to contain a woman. That's opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I love it. And I remember when you were kind of like getting into rope for a little bit and I introduced you to a dear friend and saw so many beautiful, I'm just thinking of this now that you're speaking to this, saw so many beautiful photos of you tied. And it was so love seeing a beautiful, I mean, you can't see Adam, he's sitting, but he's a very tall man, you know? So seeing this like beautiful tall man tied and surrendered, so beautiful. So I love it. I feel like Spirit was talking to you through these women and you listened and
Yeah,
it brought you on this incredible journey.
and I still love bottoming. Frankly, not afraid to say that. I do consider myself like a top and a dom and all that stuff. But in the hands of like a right, the right woman, or frankly even a man, like I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself even bi, which is I think kind of sad. But I just love learning from
Yes.
bottoming. I love
Mhm.
surrender. If someone's like really fucking good at what they do, like hell
Mhm.
yeah, sign me up. Let's do it.
Mhm. Yeah, we learned so much, you know, if we I love what Ohm says too, if you really want to be a skillful dom, top, however you want to call it, you have to see the other side. Like you have to know both sides. It's necessary. Amazing. Well, what are you up to in your work right now? I know you do one-on-one coaching with men, right?
Yes.
And do you have any other things that you're concocting and bringing forth?
Yeah, I work with women too, to be clear, but I'm writing a book about men
Ooh.
and sex, pretty much this thing of marrying the modern love and ancient wisdom.
Mhm.
So that's occupying a lot of time.
Mhm.
And I still hosting the naked events. I have a naked, we're doing a naked TED Talk on
Ooh,
Saturday.
what?
Yeah.
Where's that going to be?
Here in Brooklyn.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So I have a rotating, they're not always naked, but they're always like a little challenging, a little weird, a little edgy
Uh-huh.
events here in New York. And the thing that I'm offering lately to men, it's mostly coaching, it's mostly talking.
Mhm. Mhm.
And couples, it can get more experiential. And very, very, very recently, I've for maybe 10 years, I've worked only with men.
Mhm.
And very recently, I started to work with women. And the thing that I've found that they benefit from is, again, feeling that beast in a creating safety through feeling and seeing that beast.
Mhm.
And what I like to think is that that then sets a standard by which they can go out and ask that of the men that they're partnered with or the men that
Mhm.
they're dating, and
Mhm.
really level up and get them to realize, like, ah, that's it. That's the thing I've been missing.
Mm. Question about that for the ladies. So, yes, we want our men to learn this, but I have found in my own experience that trying to teach them how to do this like does not get me wet. So, how would you encourage women to bring their men to this work without killing polarity?
Yeah. Well, one option is to tell him to go out and learn it on other women, frankly.
Yes. Okay.
And this idea. I'll just say up front, like I'm really biased. I can consider myself monogamish. Like I'm in a monogamous relationship, but we
Mhm.
obviously with the work that I do and occasionally we'll get hall passes, to do things with other people. But my
Mhm.
heart is really with my partner, and I love her dearly, and that's not changing.
Mm.
Um,
Yay.
but for practical reasons, I highly encourage couples to create, if they are monogamous, create concessions for education, frankly.
Mhm.
So if a woman wants a man to choke her and he doesn't know how to do it or he's afraid of doing it, either the two of them can hire a coach to teach them in real time. The coach puts his hands on her. She, the man gets to see it, right? And then the man
Mhm.
tries it, and then she could be like, "Ah, it wasn't quite right," and the coach can work with them. That way, the woman isn't, fully taking responsibility of teaching.
Mhm.
And in fact, she can express some appreciation for the man, which that's all we want. Is
Yeah.
we just want pats on the head. That's what we live for.
Never enough appreciation for your man. I've
Ex-
learned that.
yes, absolutely. Or the other model is like send the guy to a class. Send the guy, hey,
Mhm.
here's a breath work class. Go. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's a lot of men who understandably are afraid. They're afraid of getting to know their beast.
Yeah.
So another thing I recommend highly is men's work. I'm really fond of this organization, the Mankind Project, that I've been with for a few
Mhm.
years. There are other men's organizations, but this one's a nonprofit. It's been around for 30 years. A high percentage of the staff are licensed therapists.
Mm.
There's a lot of work that's gone on into their programming, and people like myself sign up. We pay to staff. I pay to go and staff these retreats to help men.
Mhm.
I don't get paid,
Mhm.
and virtually every position in the Mankind Project is that way. Men are so
Mhm.
passionate about it that they pay to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard so many good things about the Mankind Project. It seems like a really good baseline. Like it's a really good place for men to start. And can you speak to why men are afraid to meet their beast?
I mean, just speaking personally, I had a tyrant of a father who, God
Yeah.
bless him, he never beat me, but he would scream at the top of
Mhm.
his lungs and stomp around and just like terrify us with his anger.
Mhm.
And I vowed as a child just to never be that ever.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the unfortunate side of that is that sometimes the beast, like even just purely on a purely practical uh, in a purely practical sense, the beast is necessary. If
Yeah.
there's a home invasion and I literally don't know how to scream because I've never
Yeah.
done it, I don't know how to, howl and growl and attack. That if that's not practiced, it cannot be put into play.
Yeah.
So I recommend any practice that gets men to learn how to move that energy and tap into it. It doesn't have to be men's work. It could be go to an improv class, learn, clowning, learn
Mm.
jujitsu, learn, a martial art or something that's embodied where you're moving in three dimensions. You're using your voice. You're being attacked. You're defending. You're attacking. These things are just necessary muscles, and it's what women look for in their measure of your beast.
Mhm.
Does this
Mhm.
man know how to move his body? Does this man know how to raise his voice?
Yeah.
If my woman, steps out in front of a taxi, in the street and is about to get hit, I scream and she jumps back. But in those little moments, she knows like, oh fuck, that beast is there,
Mhm.
but it won't be there if it's not sharpened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I love that, the reframe of, like, the beast is also the protector. Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I'm curious, I'm, like, going in all different directions. So I know you have a little girl, you have a daughter. And I love talking to people in this world who have children because I love people knowing what's possible. I work with a lot of parents in my own coaching practice and they're like, "Well, I have a child and how can I be this and how do I be myself and how do I be this beast and this sexual being while also having children and family to provide for?" So, I know this is like a huge topic in and of itself, but I'm curious your take on what it is like to be a father and be in this work.
Oh man, it goes in so many directions. So the first thing that pops into my head, which I find very interesting, is I've grown. I grew up with around like a lot of evangelical Christian people with traditional family values, and who would frown upon the work that I do, frown upon
Mhm.
this whole idea of tying up and beating up a woman for her pleasure is just so
Mhm.
alien and so bizarre and wrong.
Mhm.
And I get that. I get where they're coming from with that. And I get that that image is so adjacent to other things that are genuinely horrible. And yet, the thing that I've noticed about having had that experience is uh, I trust my daughter to be
Mm.
around people in our world
Mm.
a great deal more than I trust her to be around the
Mhm.
people who have more, I'll just use the phrase traditional family values.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather a pro dom babysit my daughter than a
Yes.
priest.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That was just the first thought. It's maybe not the most important thing I could have said, but it's just an odd thing where I'm like,
Mhm.
and in part, especially as a man, I notice I trust men who do this work.
Yes.
It's interesting. I just connected with this. So, in the same way that a woman trusts a man who knows his beast, I trust men more who know that too.
Mhm.
I trust men more who know their pleasure, they know how to get it. I don't care what kind of freaky, stuff they do in the bedroom or whatever they're into, but as long as they're doing that, they're getting their needs met and
Yeah.
it's happening between two consenting adults, I trust that man way, way, way more than men who have this like sexual repression.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I love that, and I wanna speak to there's something in there as to why I also trust more, people who have faced these parts of themselves is because there is an awareness and a looking at your shadow. To do this work, we must look at our shadow, and we have to become friends with it. We have to face it, work with it, understand why it's there, and I I also trust people 100% more who have looked at their shadow than those who have not, because that's where it comes out in all sorts of weird ways.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that's very valid.
Mhm.
And I just to be clear, like I love your reply because it expands more. Like I can think of people that maybe they're just not that kinky, or maybe they're not that sexual, but or maybe
Mhm.
I just don't know anything about their sex life. But there's a felt sense
Yeah.
of centeredness, of stability, of
Yes.
knowing themselves that comes
Mhm.
as a result of these types of practices, whether it's
Mhm.
sexual or not. But that shadow work is the key element.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Pro dom as a babysitter.
She actually has been babysat by Prodom, so I wasn't making that up.
She's gonna be so awesome. She's gonna be like 5 and she's just gonna totally get all the secrets of the universe. So
Well,
excited.
that's another interesting part is like at the same time, I feel like uh, I had too much access as a kid. Like I
Mm.
had unlimited internet access from the age of like 8 years old, and I was on
Mhm.
horrible, horrible websites that now would be like highly illegal.
Mhm.
Uh, and chat rooms and crazy stuff that fucked me up, frankly.
Mm. Yeah.
So the content of or the why and the how of how adults get to be the way they are, she can learn, at an appropriate age.
Yeah.
But what she will learn is the more felt sense,
Mhm.
which he has already begun to learn, is a more felt sense
Mm. Oh
of
yeah.
these humans around me feel solid. And I find it interesting. I notice when or group situations. She grew up in a house of 10 people during COVID. Like so
Mhm.
there was a lot of people coming and going and she just knows. She'll gravitate to the person in the room who has done this work. And
Mhm.
she'll back off from someone who has that more jittery energy.
Yeah.
She just
Mhm.
knows it in her gut. And that's what I encourage. That's where the learning is right now.
Mhm. Yeah, so good. Um, and that has me think, um, because it is so important that this pours out into children, to the people around us. It's the butterfly effect, and something that's really, it's like I feel this wave in the world right now where it's like we're moving towards, so many people are moving towards what do we need to do to help create a better earth. And I see all of this work around personal development, around our sexuality, healing the self is so important so that we become whole, so that we can co-create something better together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
and the insofar as our sexual energy
Yeah.
is so core to our being.
Yeah.
I forget who I heard this from, but I love this analogy that our sexual energy is the same thing as our creative energy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that creativity is ultimately what's going to take us to the next levels and be able to learn how to care for our earth, learn how to care for each other, develop more sophisticated systems of morals and philosophy to carry
Yeah.
out. That all
Yeah.
depends on our creative energy, which is our sexual energy.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So important. So important to be doing this work right at this time, where we are now more than ever. So thank you for bringing that. So tell us where people can find you. We will put all the links in the show notes to your site, any events you have coming up. But tell the people where they can find Adam Lamb.
Yeah, it's my first letter of my first name and then my last name, alam.co.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. We'll link that all. And thank you so much for joining me today, sharing your truth and what you're doing, and for doing this work. It's so important.
Thank you for having me, Meredith.
Thank you. All right. Until next time, serving love, I love you all.